The church was packed, the heavy Arizona sun pouring through the stained glass windows, casting a golden glow on Rick's casket. My hands trembled as I clutched a folded handkerchief, my knuckles white from the weight of grief. Everyone's faces blurred together, neighbors, family, strangers who had come to pay their respects. My husband was gone. At least, that was what I believed, until that moment. As the choir's voices rose in a hymn, my phone vibrated in my palm. At first, I thought it was another condolence message, but when I unlocked the screen, my heart stopped. The words glared back at me. I am still alive. Trust no one. The sender's name? Rick. My husband, whose body lay not 10 feet away from me. My chest heaved, a scream pressing against my throat, but no sound came out. Was this a cruel prank? A mistake? Or was my entire life built on a lie? And right then, as I stared at those impossible words, I knew this funeral was not the end of my story. It was only the beginning. Before I continue, I want to pause and say something important. To all of you watching and listening, thank you so much for being part of this community. To my returning viewers, you have no idea how much your support means to me. And to my new viewers, welcome. I cannot wait for you to hit that subscribe button. It is the fuel that keeps this channel alive. Remember to drop your thoughts in the comments as the story unfolds, because I read every single one. Now, let us get back to where it all began. My name is Linda, and I am 47 years old. My husband Rick was the kind of man people admired. He was tall, charming, and had a way of making everyone feel safe around him. We had been married for over 20 years, building a life together in Phoenix, Arizona. We had one daughter, Emily, who was away at college, and to the outside world, we seemed like the perfect family. But perfection is often a mask. Rick worked in construction, but he was more than just a foreman. He had connections, business partners, and late-night calls that I never fully understood. He told me not to worry, that he was securing our future, but sometimes his eyes carried shadows that words could not explain. When the news of his sudden death, a car accident on a deserted road, I felt more world collapse. The police said he lost control and the vehicle burst into flames. They said his body was badly burned, but enough was left to identify him. I believed them, because grief makes you cling to answers even when they do not fit. And yet, at his funeral, with that text burning on my phone, everything I thought I knew began to crumble. I slipped the device into my purse, forcing myself to sit still as though nothing had happened. My heart raced, sweat pooling at the back of my neck, but I couldn't let anyone see. Not his parents sitting beside me with red eyes, not my daughter who was weeping quietly into her hands. Whoever sent that message wanted me to stay silent. But why would someone pretend to be Rick? Or worse, what if he was truly him? The service ended, and as people lined up to offer their condolences, I tried to smile, tried to look like a widow, broken but strong, yet every handshake, every hug, every whispered, "I am so sorry for your loss," felt like an act in a theater play where I no longer knew my role. That night, when the house was finally empty and Emily had fallen asleep, I locked myself in the bedroom. I opened the phone again, staring at the message. I dialed back the number with trembling fingers. No answer. I tried again. This time, the call was declined, and then another message flashed on the screen. "If you love me, stay quiet. Watch everyone around you. Trust no one, not even family." I dropped the phone as though it had burned me. My legs gave way and I slid to the floor, shaking. If Rick was alive, then who had we buried? And if he was warning me not to trust anyone, then who in my family was lying to me? The truth was closer than I imagined, and it would tear everything apart. Sleep did not come easily that night. Every creak of the house, every shadow that shifted under the desert moonlight outside my window made me feel like I was being watched. I kept replaying the words on my phone. I am still alive. Trust no one. By morning, exhaustion had sunk into my bones, but I knew I could not let Emily see me unravel. My daughter was 20 years old, strong-willed but fragile in moments like this. Her father's death had broken her, and I could not burden her with the madness that now consumed me. So I brewed coffee, smiled faintly, and played the role of the grieving widow while my mind spun in circles. But the cracks were already showing. The first came when I remembered the accident report. The police officer who delivered the news told me Rick's car had been completely burned out. They claimed to have identified his body through dental records, yet Rick had been to the dentist just a month earlier. When I checked the paperwork later, the report only mentioned partial matches. Partial, not exact. Then came the insurance company. 2 days after the funeral, a man in a gray suit showed up at my doorstep. He carried documents, speaking politely, almost too politely. His name was Mr. Douglas. "Mrs. Parker," he said smoothly, "we just need your signature here and the claim will be processed quickly. Rick's policy was quite generous. You and your daughter will be secure." His words were meant to comfort me, but something about the eagerness in his tone made my stomach twist. Rick never told me about a policy worth $500,000. Why had he kept it a secret? I stalled. "I need time," I told him, closing the door as his polite smile faltered. That night, I found myself in Rick's office, a small room at the back of our house that smelled faintly of his cologne. I opened drawers, shuffled through files, searching for answers. Among bills, contracts, and receipts, one folder caught my eye. Inside were plane tickets to Mexico, 2 of them booked just a week before his so-called accident. My name was not on either ticket. The ground beneath me seemed to split. Who was he planning to leave with, and why? As I sat there trembling, the phone buzzed again. "Do not let them know you are suspicious. They are watching you." My blood ran cold. Who was they? The insurance man? My in-laws? Rick's business partners? The next day, I tested the waters. At breakfast, Emily sat across from me, stirring her cereal absent-mindedly. "Your father had plans," I said gently, watching her face. "Did he ever talk to you about going somewhere?" She shook her head slowly. "No, Mom. He was stressed lately, though. Always on the phone, stepping outside. Sometimes I thought he was hiding something, but I figured it was work." Her eyes welled up. "Why? Did you find something?" I forced a smile, covering my shaking hands. "No, sweetheart. Just thinking out loud." But inside, my doubts grew louder. Later that afternoon, Rick's younger brother Daniel came by. He was always the golden boy of the family, successful in real estate, always charming. He hugged me too tightly, his cologne overpowering, and whispered, "We will get through this together, Linda. You can rely on me." His words were smooth, but his eyes lingered on me in a way that unsettled me. And when he asked, almost casually, about the insurance claim, my suspicion doubled. Why was everyone so eager to talk about money while my husband's body was barely in the ground? That evening, I decided to confront someone who had been closest to Rick, his best friend, Marcus. Marcus had been at the funeral, his face drawn with grief. He was a quiet man, one who rarely spoke unless spoken to. If anyone knew something, it would be him. I drove across town to a small workshop. He looked startled when he saw me, his eyes darting nervously as though he had been caught doing something wrong. "Linda, what are you doing here?" he stammered. I need answers, Marcus, I said firmly. I know something is wrong. Rick's death, it does not make sense. Did you know about the insurance? About Mexico? Tell me the truth. His face went pale. He glanced around as though the walls had ears. Finally, he whispered, Linda, you should not be here. You need to let this go. If Rick reached out to you, if he sent you something, you need to stay quiet for your own safety. My heart pounded. So, he's alive? He clenched his jaw, his silence answering for him. Before I could push further, a car pulled up outside. Marcus's eyes widened in fear. Go, Linda, now. Do not come back here. They are watching me too. I stumbled out into the night, my pulse racing. As I got into my car, I noticed the same gray sedan parked across the street, the same one I had seen near my house the day before. A shadow sat inside, watching. I drove off quickly, but the questions burned hotter than ever. If Rick was alive, then he had enemies. But what tore me apart most was not the danger, it was the doubt. Had my husband been protecting us or betraying us? And as the desert night swallowed me whole, I realized the truth was darker than I ever imagined.
The Arizona desert has a way of holding secrets. The wind sweeps across the dry earth, erasing footprints, covering tracks, and leaving only silence behind. For days after my confrontation with Marcus, I could not shake the feeling that the truth was buried out there in the vast emptiness, waiting for me to uncover it. The messages from Rick had stopped, but the paranoia they left behind grew louder. Every time I left the house, I felt eyes on me. The same gray sedan appeared in different places, the grocery store, the church parking lot, even outside Emily's college campus. Whoever they were, they wanted me reminded that I was being watched. But fear was no longer enough to stop me. If Rick was alive, then I deserved answers. One evening, while cleaning out Rick's office again, I found something I had missed the first time. Tucked behind a row of dusty binders was a small metal box. The lock was flimsy. One hard pull, and it gave way. Inside, I found papers, bank statements from accounts I had never seen before. The numbers were staggering. Tens of thousands of dollars wired in and out. Some transfers led to Mexico, others to a town called Yuma, near the Arizona border. There were also photographs, one of Rick standing in front of a small cantina with two men I did not recognize, another of him shaking hands with someone whose face had been deliberately torn from the picture. My blood turned cold. At the bottom of the box was a note in Rick's handwriting. 4 words. Desert Safe House. Trust no one. The words clawed at my chest. If there was a safe house, then maybe Rick had left it for me to find. The next morning, I drove south, the desert stretching endlessly ahead. Emily thought I was running errands, and I hated lying to her, but she could not be dragged into this. Not yet. My tires crunched over gravel roads as the GPS led me to an isolated stretch near Yuma. There, half buried behind thorn bushes and sun-bleached rocks, stood a weathered shack. The door creaked as I pushed it open. Inside, dust hung thick in the air. The room was empty, except for a wooden cable, a metal chair, and an envelope lying neatly in the center. With trembling hands, I tore it open. Inside were photographs of Rick, recent ones. He was alive, thinner, his face worn with exhaustion, but unmistakably him. Each photo was marked with a date, just weeks before the funeral. My knees gave out, and I collapsed into the chair, clutching the pictures to my chest. Relief, anger, confusion, they all collided inside me. And then I noticed something else. Scrawled across the back of the last photograph were the words, "Linda, they will use Emily against you. Protect her." The air left my lungs in a shudder. Whoever Rick was running from, they were close enough to know my daughter's name. I barely had time to process when I heard the crunch of tires outside. Heart racing, I peeked through a crack in the wall. A black SUV rolled to a stop, and two men stepped out. They were not strangers. One of them was Daniel, Rick's brother. My hand shook as I stuffed the photographs back into the envelope and slipped it under my jacket. "Check inside," I heard Daniel say, his voice colder than I had ever heard before. "He left something here. We cannot let Linda find it." My body went numb. Daniel, the man who had hugged me at the funeral, whispering empty comfort, was part of this. I slipped out through the back window, scraping my arm on the wooden frame, and ran into the desert heat. The thorn bushes tore at my clothes as I stumbled back to my car, every step fueled by adrenaline. I started the engine and sped away, dust kicking up behind me. In my rearview mirror, I saw the men rush outside, shouting, pointing. They knew I had been there. By the time I reached Phoenix, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. I parked down the street from my house, my hands still shaking on the wheel. Inside, Emily sat on the couch, headphones on, scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled, unaware of the storm raging around us. My heart ached. If Daniel and his men were willing to use her, then I had to shield her from the truth, no matter the cost. That night, I locked the photographs inside my own dresser drawer and sat in the dark, piecing together the fragments of this nightmare. Rick was alive, Daniel was involved, and whoever else was part of this had power, money, and eyes everywhere. But the most haunting thought of all came as I closed my eyes. If Rick had trusted me enough to leave that message, then why had he abandoned me in the first place? What was he running from? Or worse, who was he running with? The answer came sooner than I expected, knocking at my door. When I opened it, the man standing there was a stranger. Rough beard, sunburned face, eyes darting nervously. He asked, his voice low, "Linda Parker?" "Yes." He handed me a small flash drive, pressing it into my palm. "Rick sent me. He says it is time you know the truth. But once you see this, there is no turning back." Before I could reply, he turned and walked into the night, disappearing into the shadows. I clutched the flash drive, my heart hammering. And for the first time, I wondered if the truth about Rick would not save me, but destroy everything I loved.
The flash drive sat in my hand like a loaded weapon. I locked my bedroom door, shut the blinds, and slipped it into my laptop. My heart pounded as the screen flickered to life. A folder appeared with a single file labeled, "For Linda." I clicked it. The video opened to Rick's face. My husband. Alive. His hair was disheveled, his eyes hollow, but there was no mistaking him. "Linda," he began, his voice trembling. "If you are watching this, then they know I am gone, but not in the way you think." He drew a heavy breath. "I staged my death because I had no other choice. Daniel, my own brother, is part of something dangerous. Illegal deals, money laundering, partnerships with men who would kill anyone who got in their way. I found out too much, and when I tried to walk away, they turned on me. The accident you heard about, it was supposed to be real. They planned to kill me. I only survived because Marcus helped me escape." My hands clutched the sides of the laptop, my whole body trembling. "I wanted to tell you everything," Rick continued, his eyes glistening, "but I could not risk your life or Emily's. If they knew you had the truth, you would both be in danger. I stayed away to protect you, but now I do not know how long I can run. If I disappear for good, you must trust no one. Not Daniel, not the insurance men, not anyone connected to me. The only person you can rely on is yourself." He leaned closer to the camera, his voice breaking. "I love you, Linda. Please keep Emily safe. If you ever see me again, it will not be because I came home. It will be because the nightmare finally ended." The video cut off, leaving me in silence. Tears streamed down my face. My husband had been alive all along, but instead of a homecoming, all he could offer was a ghost of himself. I sat there for hours, numb, replaying his words, weighing the truth. He had not abandoned me out of betrayal, but out of fear. And yet the ache of his absence still cut deeper than any lie. The next morning, Daniel came by unannounced. His smile was too smooth, his presence too heavy. "How are you holding up?" he asked, pouring himself coffee without permission. I watched him closely, Rick's warning echoing in my mind. Trust no one. "I am fine," I said quietly, hiding the storm inside me, trying to move on. He studied me, as though searching for cracks in my mask. Then he smiled. "Good. That is what Rick would have wanted." His words were poison. I smiled back. Even his rage burned in my chest. I knew the truth now. I knew what he had done. But exposing him would put Emily in danger, and I could not gamble with her life. Not yet. That night, I drove into the desert once more. The stars stretched endlessly above me, the air dry and still. I buried the flash drive beneath a cluster of rocks, marking the spot in my memory. Some truths were too dangerous to carry openly. As I drove back, I realized something. Rick might never come home. The man I loved had chosen to vanish into shadows, and the only thing I could do was honor his wish, protect Emily, stay silent, endure. It was unbearable, but there was also strength in it. For the first time, I understood that survival is not always about fighting back. It is about knowing when to wait, when to shield, when to outlast the storm. Emily never asked questions I could not answer, and I never let her see the war raging inside me. To her, I was simply a grieving widow trying to heal. To myself, I was a guardian of a truth too dark to share. And every now and then, late at night, I would stare at my phone, half expecting another message from Rick, but the silence was all I received. Perhaps one day the nightmare would end and I would see him again. Or perhaps the desert had already claimed him, erasing the last of his footprints. Either way, the lesson carved itself into my soul. Love is not always safe. Family is not always loyal. And sometimes survival means living with questions that will never have answers. So I carried the truth quietly. For Emily, for myself, for the man I loved and lost twice in one lifetime. And as I tell you this now, I ask you, what would you do if the person you buried told you they were still alive? Would you fight for the truth, or would you protect the lie to save the ones you love? Thank you so much for listening to my story. Don't forget to drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear what you would have done if you were in my shoes. And if you enjoyed this journey, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support is the heartbeat that keeps stories like this alive.